All right, everybody, welcome to the Property Master Show. Today, we're going to have our specialist with regards to service accommodation. He's also an architect, and he's gone through a lot of experience and years of experience. So, David, how are you? Welcome to our
Well,
show.
thank you, Ben. Great to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, really hard. And maybe, David, you can explain to us a little bit of what you do. What is your experience in property?
Sure. So the thing we're going to be talking about today is service accommodation. I do have a service accommodation business. I'll talk quite a bit about that. But my background is I started as an architect. And indeed, I still have an architectural practice and doing some quite nice projects at the minute. And also property investor. So I started my, it was interesting actually, I did lots of commercial conversion projects for other people as an architect. And then I got to a stage, I thought, oh, I should be doing that for myself really. Hadn't really understood how to do it. I went to a property presentation, I don't know, 5 years ago, whatever it was, and suddenly thought, oh, yes, I could do that. And so we started down that route and actually started with HMOs in Liverpool. And that was where I did my first commercial conversion, which turned into an HMO. So I got the architectural experience, I've got property investing experience. But then I no doubt will talk about how I got into it. But then I actually started a service accommodation company based in Southampton and properties locally.
Where you're based,
Yeah, but now starting to spread, including properties into Scotland.
Oh, wow. So Southampton, Liverpool, you still own the property, the HMO in Liverpool, right?
Yeah. So that's still there.
Scotland.
That's running well. Yeah. So, but it's interesting, and I guess it's because I'm at the moment focusing on managing properties for other people. Well, of course, those other people are in all sorts of different locations. So the new properties I'm involved with is determined by their location rather than mine. And as I've grown in experience in terms of accommodation, of course, you then gain the knowledge by which you can manage things remotely, which for me is the key.
And I know you mentioned that you get some more additional properties. I'm sure it's because of networking. Is that correct?
It's absolutely networking. So, one lady that we're dealing with at the minute, we're just about to do a third property for her. But she's also referred me to various other people, so that they're bringing properties on stream. Somebody that's working for me is now asking me to manage their property. So, bit by bit, the network grows, absolutely.
The network is such an important aspect, and that's the reason why we keep in contact, because you go to property investors or landlords meeting, you get to meet other people, and you get a little bit more expertise, knowledge, and helpful. Everybody are so helpful for each other with regards to expanding of their portfolios and their work. So I know we know each other for like 5 years or so. I know you're also an architect. Maybe you can speak about that. And also you have been to a mentorship mastermind. Maybe you can expand about that, these two subjects.
Yeah, so I won't say too much about the architectural work at the minute. It's quite wide, quite varied.
Definitely, we'll leave it for next time,
Yeah, but we have some lovely projects on at the moment. They're fascinating times, particularly because of the climate change issue, which is such a huge issue and sort of quite close to my heart, really. But anyway, I could go off on a tangent, and I won't do that for you.
No, but I mean, how many years are you an architect?
Oh,
how long you've been doing
that? Life, so 40 plus years.
40 plus years, that's a lot of experience. And it comes into light whenever you're doing all your properties, definitely. So 40 years, yes, that's amazing.
Is so useful because the thing that I do whenever I go in a property, I just see the space. And my mind clicks into everything, how the space works, how it looks, how it feels, how the storage works. And for me, I mean, a lot of property investors see a property as a sort of like a money machine, if I can put it. And of course, as a business person, you have to do that. But actually, for me, it's all about how it works and how it feels, and it's the experience. So it's not just the look, but it's the functional, it's the, you know, the every aspect of the building has to sort of click and work together. And of course, when I see, I just love going into derelict buildings because I just see that.
Oh, me too. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I don't like the smell, but you get used to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
you know,
anyway,
I always say when I go, my niche is auction houses, and always is all closed, and it smells like an auction house. My
yeah.
God, there is the smell of still air, like not moving.
Yeah.
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 So, but yeah, in regards to that, you know, in my aspect, when I go to a house, I'm the same as you. I look at different strategies like service accommodation, split some of the rooms and see maybe you can expand it. In your sense, I think you have a very big advantage because you're an architect and you can bring a lot of value to the table in order to look at the property and see how much value can you add if you change something, basically. Yeah.
Yes, well, I think that, yeah, there are two things. One is the add value, which obviously is to do with, if you like, monetary return. But I think also I can usually see where you can improve a property without necessarily spending a lot of money. In fact, sometimes might even be spending less money. I could give you instances of that as well. But actually, it better suits the purpose or the function that the building is meant to be achieving. You know, it gives a better experience for whoever is using it, and that to me that's where I get my buzz.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, me too. Yeah, you feel alive, you know. Maybe you can mention a couple of words with regards to your mentorship.
Yeah, so I do. There are two things really. One is I've done sort of mastermind things myself. You know, I did a year-long mastermind course. I've done a variety of other property training courses as well. Some of those quite extended. And the real value of those things is actually sort of changing mindset, seeing things in a different way. So it enabled me to bring my experience in as an architect, but actually to be able to see property in a different way, to see business in a different way, and that's been really, really valuable. But
so change of mindset basically is the thing that the major thing that you've taken.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. So and you know I'm probably for me one of the biggest, and I'm not unique in this. This is the case for many sort of you know, sort of professional working people. The area that I probably struggled with at first, and you know, maybe still do, is the whole marketing side. You know, getting yourself out there, getting yourself known. So I have no problem on the technical side. I don't have a problem on the sort of team building side and the coordination and the understanding of legalities. That's all in my, you know, professional background, and quite enjoy that side of things. But when it comes to actually, you know, social media and you know, websites and all of those sorts of things, also important. And of course, the world has changed since I started. You know, when I started my career, we didn't have computers.
But that's why you have like a personal assistant or virtual assistant that can do that. I used to have use of Fiverr people per hour, and they can tackle this basically for a very cheap salary. Yeah.
So, well, I mean, interesting, and we talked quite a long time about that. We use virtual assistants. I've got 3 at the minute in the Philippines, and so that is our preferred location. We've had people in Armenia, in India, in Pakistan, you know, all sorts of locations. And we have used Fiverr. In fact, I still use Fiverr on the architectural side for certain things. But they're intermittent. And in terms of day-to-day continuity, I think our experience is that it's better to have somebody with you on a that you engage with direct, and it's on an ongoing basis, and you get that continuity. But you know, it all depends on the brief. You know, if you've got a one-off project, then yes, you can go to a specialist for that project, and we do that from time to time.
definitely. Okay, so you have your service accommodation business. Can you tell me how did it all start? Was your first step? Yeah, going back, going back in
Ah,
time. Yes.
okay, so I was going to say I wouldn't
You
recommend
always,
it.
by the way, mention we. Maybe you can explain. I know what is we, but you have
Oh,
like a
it's,
business
yeah,
partner, which is partner
well,
in crime. But what?
yes, so my wife Candy. So we started the business together, all the businesses together, except the architectural one. That was mine
Yeah, yeah.
from the term. She's actually moving on to other things now, so she's not really involved on day-to-day basis
Okay.
with the business. So it has become me now, if I can put
Mm-hmm.
it that way.
Okay. But
But
the reason why I mentioned it is such an important thing to have brainstorming. I have my business partner
yeah,
as well, and we always bounce ideas. And sometimes,
yeah.
you're kind of in a loop. It's so important to have a chat with somebody who understands and knows and bounce ideas from him. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that is imperative, and there are different
definitely.
ways of doing that. One is the business partner. Obviously, in my case, it was a wife or is a wife, and we still bounce things. Sort
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
even though she's not actively involved with business, I will tell her what what's going on and what I'm thinking about, or
Yeah.
a challenge I've got, or an idea that I've had, and we do bounce those things. And sometimes she says, "Oh, I was thinking about this. Why don't you do that?" And
Mm.
those things are absolutely of value.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But
equally, I mean,
I just have to mention with regards to that, sorry to interrupt you, but
mm,
I noticed that you have to be very particular with the person you bounce ideas from, and who do you choose as a joint venture or the person? Does he understand? Does he not understand? It has to be very particular. Correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah, no, you need to choose a person that's going to give you a strength in the area that you need strength. So it might be
Hmm.
business operation, it might be
Yeah,
understanding the market, it can be a variety of things. So you need to understand that.
yeah.
Because in a way you want that person to stretch you in the area that you're finding difficult.
Correct. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're going back to the first step that you had.
yeah.
How did it all start?
So it's sort of when we were doing things up in Liverpool on the sort of HMO front. What happened is we had already, before we started our property journey, we had gained a couple of buy-to-let properties in Southampton. I won't say by accident, because that would not be true, but it wasn't done with any specific property knowledge. We haven't been on property courses or anything of that nature. Obviously, I had a bit of understanding of buildings because of my
Hmm.
my career. Candy is strong on the sort of, if you like, the business side of things, and so we've seen an opportunity. We bought a couple of buy-to-lets. They were ticking along quite nicely for a while, but we got to a point where we were having tenant problems, and probably more significantly, we were having letting agent problems, and it was starting to get quite painful. And certainly from my point of view, I was spending really quite a lot of time and not making a lot of income.
Mm.
And this is quite a few years ago now. And Candy actually said, she said, "Why don't we just Airbnb them?" And that was before we'd ever heard of the word serviced accommodation. And to her, it just seemed like a good idea. So why didn't we do it? And so actually, we did. We started, and then we actually did a training course. I think it was with Progressive on serviced accommodation. We learned the terminology, serviced accommodation,
Yeah, yeah.
and so off we were. So we're sort of, I won't say it was by accident, but it was certainly by circumstance. And we found ourselves with a couple of properties. And at first it went really well. We decided not to manage them ourselves. We found somebody to manage them for us. And that was, now bear in mind, 5 years ago, whatever it was, the serviced accommodation market was a lot less mature than it is now. So the first folk we found started off quite well, but it started slipping, and the performance was reducing, and they had their eyes on other business ventures and moves, and they weren't really giving it the focus it needed. And we got to a point we thought, this is just not working, and so we found somebody else.
Hmm.
that person didn't really have the system set up to make it work well, so it didn't go terribly well. And then we found somebody else, and right at the last minute, we were just about signing on the dotted line. He said, "Actually, I've just had an opportunity of a lifetime. I've got to do this. I'm really sorry, I can't do it for you."
Oh
and
God.
we were sort of left with, "Oh, what do we do now?"
Yeah.
And I'll say this because it probably is useful to people that might be starting in service accommodation. I wouldn't say don't do it, but what actually happened for us at that point is we thought, oh help, we're left with an issue. We've got to do something about it. We'll do it. And in fact, the guy said, look, you're perfectly capable, you can do this. And what he was really saying is you could actually manage the business, you can drive the channel manager, and we'll talk about that a bit more. That's a bit of software that stops double bookings. And he was absolutely right, I could. But actually what it did, it probably put me back 12 months because actually I spent too much time driving a channel manager and doing the IT rather than actually growing the property portfolio.
Yeah.
And so I see that
which is good and bad, you know. In a way, you also learn the inside out of the property channel manager, PMC.
That is certainly true. And you know, hindsight's always a wonderful thing, isn't it? So yes, I absolutely gained the experience. In that sense, it was good. I also learned that the channel manager we were using was not the right one for us to be using long term. We've now moved.
Yeah, we had the discussion about it, I remember.
Yeah. And so yeah, we learned many things. But in hindsight, I probably should have realised what was happening, and perhaps, you know, after 6 months said, right, I've got to get somebody else to do this for me. That's what we do now. We outsource as much as possible, as quickly as possible. You can't always do it straight away, but so growing the team and outsourcing is part of the plan. So. And that's why we're happy to take on properties remotely. So our team, of course, are remote. The VAs are in the Philippines.
So just to the first steps, basically, so you had a couple of properties, and you went to this mastermind, and you started doing your properties as a service accommodation. You did, I'm guessing, Airbnb, and that went well. And then later on, it got a bit more difficult, or
more complex rather than difficult. And you know, most people do service accommodation. I mean, the big thing about, I mean, this is a bit of a cliche statement, but I'm going to make it because it's so true. Service accommodation is not a property strategy; it's a hospitality strategy. And it's a strategy with lots of moving parts, and I'd like to say that any of them can go wrong, but if I'm perfectly honest, all of them will go wrong.
Definitely, yeah. We'll talk about it later on. So after these two properties, obviously you would need to expand it a little bit more. It's not enough. How do you search for new properties? Do you have your gold mine or focus areas?
Yeah, so for us, we made the big decision that our service accommodation properties were in Southampton. So we I suppose in a way grown a bit tired of travelling up to Liverpool all the time. So and we looked at the SA market in Liverpool. Now, obviously, there are operators in Liverpool, and it does work. But at that time, and we're looking at 5 years ago, Liverpool was much more seasonal than Southampton. So the winter was lean and hard. The summer was good. The market up there tended to focus a lot on you know, the sort of partying scene, if I can put it that way, city centre partying. That didn't fit well with us, value-wise, and you know, the amount of maintenance that operation takes is a lot higher. And so what we decided is, we'd seen a few successful operators in Southampton. It was a much more balanced market all year round. Yes, it drops in the winter, but not as radically. So we decided to stay in Southampton. So we chose that as our gold mine area. We started looking at additional properties, both from a rent to SA. We didn't take on more purchases at that time. We took on some rent to SA properties, and of course that networking thing, we started managing for other people. Now, some of those folk have moved on. They've decided they want to sell their properties.
Yeah, they come and go.
They come and go. But
did you manage to get a hold of this? How to say? When to service accommodation? Where did you get a hold of them? How did you get to investors
so we did it through.
the property?
Yeah, so we did it through agents basically. So and we've got quite a system at the moment. So which our VAs very much operate for the most part. So we keep an eye on Rightmove. We keep contact with agents. We use the, how can I put it? We use the adverts on Rightmove as the vehicle to speak to agents, either in person or over the phone or both. We build up relationships, and then if those agents, so you get to a stage eventually that those agents, when they get new properties coming on, they'll ring you up and say, oh, we've got one coming on, do you want to have a look? And so you're almost in first in the queue, and that really is where you want to be. But it does take a while to build that up, but that we have got to that point with a few agents at the minute, and that's working well. If
how many months are we talking about until you build all this relationship with the agents?
Oh, you can probably do that in about 3 months.
3 months, okay.
It's not a hideously long process. But the thing
that's impressive actually, because you know we spoke about before. I think you know, some people think you know, people are not going to stand in line giving you your property. You have to present yourself. It takes time. You have to build a relationship, and I think three months is quite impressive.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and it probably helps having had the professional background in terms of being an architect, but one of the things I'd say is one of the most important things dealing with the agents is just being authentic. You know, there are quite a lot of property courses around that say, you know, take donuts and have all sorts of tips and tricks to try and get alongside the agents. And I've never found that really works terribly well. Actually, if you can talk the same language, and the language is, you know, do you like the property? Do you know what you would do with it? And are you willing to pay for it? And if you can have a conversation around those subjects and make their life as easy as possible, because ultimately what they want the property that's on their desk to go.
So, David, can you explain to us what the extra expenses you had whenever you had these additional properties, the existing properties? Obviously things change, you want to improve. What was not anticipated?
So I think for us, some of the things that perhaps we hadn't fully factored in at the beginning, it's like everything, it's a learning curve, isn't it? But things like locked cupboards in a property, so that you can store supplies within a property without the guests having access to it. You know, it sounds fairly obvious thing, and it's probably fairly well reported now, but at the time we were doing it, it wasn't. But
some people look for like a locked, like a full cupboard or full room, or you can use also cabinets in a way. Yeah, that's another solution.
Yes, I think our experience is the broom cupboard works best because you have quite a volume. Trouble is, all these things link. So, you know, one of the questions is how you're going to handle the linen, and where is the linen going to be stored? And what you will find is if you're working with a linen company, they will probably have limited storage capacity, and they actually don't want to store your linen. They'd rather you store it. So it's then going to be in your cupboard, in which case you need a big cupboard. If you have a housekeeper who's like an individual sort of cleaner housekeeper, she may be willing to take stuff to the property, deal with it and take the dirty away, and you don't need as much storage. But then you've got to have one of those people that has got some storage capacity of her own, or is happy to have this stuff floating around in her car for a week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and I think
that's obviously it's like additional cost you have to take in consideration. Some cleaning company work with the laundromats, so they have the. Maybe you can also build the seed in the brain, and just tell them that is possible. That's how they can improve and develop. Up to them, obviously. How big is their volume as well? So,
and of course it's like all these things in business. There's never 100% right and wrong answer. There are different ways of skinning a cat, if I can put it that way.
Yes.
And you know, so linen, for instance, you can buy it or you can hire it. We've now had experience of both. Some people swear by the concept it's better to hire it, but our experience is that for us proved more expensive and less flexible, particularly when you're coming to the end of properties. So we've actually found it better to buy linen. We've got now a preferred supplier that we use, and then we know we're getting the same product all the time. We've got better control of it. But you know, but the important thing though is that you think all these things through. You know, how are people going to get access to the property? Have you got an electronic lock? You've got, you know, because access to the property will be a cost. Storage and linen handling will be a cost.
And the thing is also each property is different. Where do you put the access? Do they allow it? The managing, you have to take so many things in consideration, and that will be, you know, time and cost of it, definitely. What like other things that you had, like additional cost that you couldn't?
Probably the biggest costs are not directly property related, but it's actually IT systems and outsourcing staff. So obviously, probably most people are familiar with the concept of a channel manager. It's a bit of software that stops you getting double bookings from Airbnb and Booking.com at the same time. Although I should say the real goal is to get direct bookings, not OTA.
Definitely, yeah, obviously, yeah. So they take a very big chunk of it, commission, Well, but you have to manage it also correctly, the direct booking. If you don't have a system, you could be taking advantage of the property in a way, legally.
Absolutely right. You need to be geared up for it. You need to have the systems in place. You need to have the software in place. But I forgot what I was going to say now.
So you said about the property channel manager, that is an extra expense, basically, but that's something that you added to your business. Because, I mean, the way, when you said it, the way I'm thinking is, I traded my time for more money so I can get more properties. That's how I thought when you were saying that.
Absolutely. And so now that, I mean, we as a business have decided that we are going to go down the managing properties for other people. That's the side of the business that we're growing the most. And so we have set up the systems now. We've got the people in place, we've got the software in place. So it's not just the channel manager, we also have pricing software, sort of automatic pricing software, which you still need to control to some degree, but it will do a lot of the work for us. But also we use some software to manage the housekeepers, you know, so not just from the calendar point of view, but also from the recording of what they need to do and the recording that they have done it and the reporting if they find issues or problems. So of course those
so that was like extra expenses you mentioned, or?
So both of those are subscription softwares, and they're not, you know, they're not insignificant. But all the time, what you have to think about with any expenditure is it going to improve the experience of the person going into the property, and is that going to make them more likely to come again? So that, for me, that's the big shift. You know, it's not about the property and what we can do with it and make it look better. It's about, is it going to give somebody a better experience, and will that make them more likely to come again? That's the whole drive of the business.
Direct booking. Yeah, that's how you get the direct booking if they come back. But if you promote it correctly, you have to promote it correctly. Otherwise, they just come back via the last link of Airbnb. You know, it's
absolutely, and we do indeed direct to market to everybody that stays with us.
Okay, should we move on to regards to power team structure? Power team is always important, What is your power team?
So there are two sides to this. There are the sort of, if you like, the outer house people. So the housekeeper is the most important one. But also, of course, you need handymen, you need electricians, you need plumbers, you need gardeners. So we prefer houses to apartments. That's a whole nother story, but we do. And of course, if you have a house, you have a garden, and guess what? It grows weeds. So you need to have somebody maintaining it properly. So those sorts of people, the laundry company, they're a key player. So you've got quite a number.
I call the cleaning people or the housekeeper the intelligence officer. That's the one that you know, they're actually in the field. They see what is going on, what has been left, what's taken place, and that's to my perspective, is the most vital member of your power team.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is, and we have a
vet them.
You need a very clear process. You know, they need to go in, they need to see that the place has been left in the way that it should, that nothing's missing, nothing's damaged, nothing's broken.
Yes.
If it is, they've got to know how to raise the alarm and get somebody there quickly before the next visitor arrives. And not only that, they then need to do whatever they do cleaning wise and get it all sort of, you know, cleaned and beds changed and all the rest of it. But what you see from the photos behind, they also need to dress it in a way that makes it look attractive and appealing when the new visitor walks in. So there's a range of skills there, and you know, you can get somebody that can do all of those things. Ideally, you would find somebody that's been doing it previously, you know, is used to doing SA work, and they will get it that much quicker. But if you get somebody that is perhaps been doing cleaning in houses, they will actually take quite a bit of training to get up to speed.
Do you have like pictures that you provide to your housekeeper of how to set up the property?
Absolutely. So we actually use a bit of software that is linked to our channel manager. So when we get a booking, the channel manager tells the housekeeper software that we got a booking. It goes on their calendar, so they can see when they need to do a changeover clean or a mid-stay clean, and it's got a schedule of what they need to do, and it's got photographs of how we like it being set up.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. And that saves you a lot of time. Would you say these softwares?
Yes. Well, sorry, yes and no. It takes a lot of time setting up at the beginning.
Okay.
But once it's set up, it runs quite efficiently, and it's like everything. You've got to put the investment in at the beginning, and you know, not only the setting up of the software, but also the communication with the people, because they won't get it straight away. You know, they need help, they need training, they need to understand what things are important to you and why. And actually, that's probably the one thing I would say. If you're taking somebody on, and you're trying to help them see how you like things doing, it always helps a lot if you say why. Don't just say what you want, but say why you want it. And then if they've got the
they can understand and give suggestions. Yeah, because I remember I was using one of your housekeepers and say, you can use that, or she set up the bed a little bit differently, because I would just say setting up all the pictures for my service accommodation, and she said, okay, you can use that, you can use that. So they see a lot of properties, so use them, you know. Just going back to your software that you mentioned, which one do you use?
For the housekeeper, we use a bit of software called Properly.
Properly, okay.
And it works really very well. You know, you know, the other thing I would say is all of these bits of software, the better they are, the more expensive they are, but actually probably the more benefit they give you as a business. So I wouldn't say to somebody that's got one property, because you know, a lot of people start SA, they've got one or maybe two properties, they're having to go themselves. That's quite a hard place to be, but you probably wouldn't invest in that sort of software for that number of properties. But once you're up to half a dozen or more properties, you suddenly realize that this is a complex process with lots of moving parts. The more smoothly and better informed the process can be, the better it will run. And from that point of view, that's when you start bringing in the more sophisticated softwares.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, I just want to, with regards to that, just to remind everybody to like and subscribe the channel. If you have any questions, you can put down the comments down below with regards to software. I'm sure David would love answering questions that you might have. Would you, for our audience, believing that that is going to be beginners, maybe intermediate, what software would you, is there any suggestion would you offer for starting with?
So we do various things really. So we do offer that if people want to, if you like, sort of work alongside us. So in other words, we would manage their property, but actually explain what we're doing as we go. We certainly do that with people. So rather than us just take over the management, we actually give some level of training. We're quite happy to provide mentorship to people if they want, you know, sort of, but we do it on a bespoke. We don't have a package, so I can certainly say this is what we do and this is what it costs. We do it on a per case, depending on what people need. From a, you know, some people want a lot. They really want to learn how to do it themselves, and that's absolutely fine. We can help with that.
Yeah, definitely. So if somebody is interested in mentorship with David, we can discuss that. As he said, it doesn't have any package, but you can mention it down below in the comments. With regards to the Power Team, the software, what kind of services does it give you? Obviously, it covers the IT part. You have pictures of the properties, a connection to the housekeeper to leave information, any other things that they help you with or that you found out?
Yeah, so I mean, the three bits of software that work together, the channel manager, which is, you know, starts at the, you know, avoiding double bookings, but it's so much more than that, because what it actually does is really a complete project management tool. So it deals with all the guest communications before they arrive, all of the guest communications while they are in the property, and then the subsequent marketing to them after they leave the property. There's a certain amount of marketing, and it puts that information into our CRM. We're actually using MailChimp at the moment. So we always stay in touch with people to encourage them to come back at future dates. And that works.
CRM basically is just, if you can explain, is the charging system, basically.
Sorry, say again?
The CRM, when you said CRM, basically just to explain, is for the charging system.
So, sorry, no, the CRM is like an email marketing program. So we use MailChimp. So the channel manager itself will send some messages to people when they leave the property and say, hope you had a great stay, do get in touch if you're going to come again, you know, that sort of thing. And we do that a day or two after they leave, we do it a week after they leave, and we do it a month after they leave. But at that point, it goes
to remind them with regards to reviews or any other stuff.
Both, yeah, reviews. And reviews are really important.
Very important, super important, yes.
Absolutely. So we encourage them to leave reviews, and certainly those messages cover those topics. But even if they haven't booked again within a month, even if they're not leaving reviews within a month, you don't want to lose sight of those people being potential future customers. So at that point, we move their details out into our CRM, which is MailChimp for us, so that once a quarter, once every 6 months, and we do different campaigns, we are sending out marketing campaigns to all our previous. Yes, absolutely. To get
in order to cut down the commission, so you get more chunk of the profit. Yes,
But the other thing, but I probably ought to say this because it is quite an important thing. Don't lose sight that this is a people business. So although we become increasingly more sophisticated, increasingly more reliant on quite sophisticated software, ultimately it is still a people business. So we actually do make contact with all of our guests by phone.
Do you? Oh, wow.
We absolutely do. I'll tell you why in a minute, and it's really important.
You do it yourself, or do you have one of your assistants do it?
Both. both. So historically, it's been me. It still is me quite a bit, but increasingly, I'm getting other people to do it.
Yeah.
But it's and there's a bit of a reason why I do it. So if and that's a sort of, in a way, you contact them to say, well, you know, I hope everything's going okay, but do let us know if you've got any, you know, any needs or whatever. And because they invariably say, no, it's all fine.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that's the end of the conversation. But at that point, you can say, well, by the way, just being nosy, what brings you to Southampton? And then of course, that's the point when they, you know, quite a lot of our, not all, but quite a lot of our visitors are contractors. And at that point, they say, oh, we're working on this roofing project, you know, ordnance survey or whatever it is. And then
let me call your manager. Let me talk to him, and then you get additional business. Yes,
pretty.
That's what I was
much
doing. I was calling companies, to get more contractors. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So you, but of course, they will give you the lead to who to contact, and
yes.
You know, but the really
people are very, very helpful. They do give the contacts, phone numbers. They do try to help. You know, you know, I think it's sometimes it's like a point you have to pass. I didn't have an issue. I just called them up. You know, there's nothing to lose. You know, you just go for it, and then you know you're surprised and highly motivated even more once you get additional information from people or contacts.
But we do tend to do it in the middle of the first week, because typically what happens is contractors, well, partly like everybody in the world, they're slightly disorganized, so they book at the last minute.
Yeah, that's true. Yes,
but of course, probably more important.
I'm gonna book a hotel today, by the way, for tomorrow.
Yeah. And partly for them, they don't always know quite when their project's going to go ahead, because everything before their trade is being delayed. So they're all hooked. Are they really going to come next Monday, or is it going to be the Monday after? And suddenly they get the call, no, it's going to be this Monday. And so they book a week in panic and they come. Well, of course, if you talk to them in the middle of that week and they like your accommodation, what are they going to be saying to their boss? They're going to be saying, this is a good place, I'd like to stay here. They don't
definitely.
So you've got them on side. So it's in a way why, in terms of everything setting up wise, yes, you've got to be thinking about things in terms of how your business operates and business return, but you've really got to get into that mindset. What is going to make it the best experience for them? What's going to make it the easiest experience for them? You know, is it the quality of tellers? Whatever it might be, you've got to make it that they want to be in that place. And then when you ring and say, is it okay? They'll say yes. And then when you say, how long are you going to be here? And they say 3 months. And then you say, well, who do I speak to? They will tell you exactly who to speak to, and they'll put the recommendation on.
You know, what I noticed, that I was doing meet and greet, and I got a lot of good reviews, and almost like most of the time, like 90%. So I would suggest for people to do meet and greet, if it's possible to grow up the business, to do meet and greet by themselves. It's not as easy, because sometimes, you know, you want to go for something to do with the kids, and, you know, you're waiting and waiting and waiting. So it has to fit your way of life, if it's possible. But if you are able to do so, that's how you get the reviews. Just moving on with regards to your systems and structure, what about the terms and conditions? You have it in your PMC also.
We do. We require 3 key things of everybody that books with us, irrespective of whether it's direct booking or whether it's a channel booking. So the 3 things are that they have to sign the terms and conditions, and that is you know, really quite important thing. The other is they fill in the check-in form, so we know the names of the people that are actually coming in, which of course not always the same as the names of the people that booked. You know, so if an office books, we still want to know the name and the number of the person moving in. So we have a form that covers that, and we also do a deposit. And the beauty of a channel manager is you can link it to, we use Stripe, a payment processing tool. So we don't actually take a deposit, we actually put a hold on their card and then we release it.
Like a car rental, it's like a hotel. They take usually deposit. It's the same, but basically don't be shy. I mean, to take that. and it protects you as well. Then the power
Absolutely.
is with you rather than with them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it absolutely does. And nobody has ever complained or refused.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember when we first went to a deposit. In fact, we right back at the beginning, we had a bad experience, a sort of party house experience, and we got off quite lightly. But I remember that feeling of walking into a property. Somebody had a party there. By all accounts, there had been dozens and dozens of people there. There was furniture upturned. There was tomato ketchup and curry all up the walls. It was terrible. And yet that heart-sinking moment, you think, oh, sugar, this is going to be expensive. Fortunately, all cleaned up. But I remember out of that, coming to a conclusion, because I'd had various discussions about deposits, thought, no, if you put a big deposit, 200 quid seems an awful lot. People are not going to do that.
It's not, that's what I thought is the same. I'm with you,
Yeah. But actually, since we've done it, we've never had. I mean, you get occasionally things that are not brilliant. It's life in this business, but we've not had the horrors, if I can put it that way. And actually, also, if something is broken, not there will always be breakages. You've got to accept that. You lose a plate, you lose a glass. You don't charge for those things, or at least we don't. But if somebody is really clumsy and does something, I mean, we had somebody recently, and a shower hose was broken, and a coffee machine was broken. So like two things in one visit, and you think, well, that person's being really clumsy. So we did charge something for that. And of course, we've got a deposit with which we can do it. And we have we don't just take it. We have a discussion with the company in question. You come to an agreement, but it's much easier if you've got the deposit hold in your hand rather than having go to say, oh, this has happened, can I send you an invoice, sort of thing.
I had myself like a lost key, so we came to we negotiated the price. But the funny thing, I was in contact with you also. I had like a party. It took me forever to clean the house. I just remember again, the dread of opening the door after they left. I was so happy I got the key. And then it took me like 8 hours to clean, and it's like it ruins the day, And with regards to deposit, I had also a situation that I had a prostitution in one of my building. I had a phone call at 1:30 at night, a couple of phone calls from the neighbors. And then I had luckily a police officer, which was the neighbor, and he was taking snapshots of all the people who were coming in. So I kept the deposit just to make sure that I wanted to give it back, but eventually she didn't answer me. But I just wanted to make a point, because later on, if it's not me, it's going to be you that is going to be experiencing this prostitution. So you have to make a point, otherwise. But that's why you have the power with you with the deposit. So so terms and condition, very, very important. Where can you get a hold of it? The internet?
I mean, the Facebook groups, there are quite a few service accommodation Facebook groups. They're very, I mean, we got ours from a previous training, but there are various sources.
That's what we said. The network is so important. That's where you can get it. I think I got mine from you.
May well have done. And you tinker and tailor it to suit what you need. To be honest, I mean, I've seen all sorts of things on Facebook groups. You've got to be careful what you do and don't take from there. But it is quite a helpful source of information and insight. We have never had to, how can I put it, legally rely on the terms and conditions. But just the fact it's there, I'm sure.
It's a deterrent. I think it's a deterrent. When people read it, they are being careful. So okay. What about plant and machinery tax exemptions? Like, for example, you buy furniture, capital allowance. Maybe you can expand a little bit more about that.
It's a really important subject. So we actually. I won't go into reasons why we haven't actually called on it ourselves, and there are reasons for that. So it doesn't apply to every situation, but fundamentally, if you're buying a property for a commercial use, and this is a commercial use,
Yes.
You are entitled to capital allowances in certain circumstances. And typically, if you're buying a property, 2/3 of it is the building and 1/3 of it is plant and machinery. So that's, you know, the electrics, the heating, the fire alarm, the CCTV, all of the equipment, if you like.
Even tables, chairs, beds.
Yeah, well, those are furnishings. I'm not sure if those are included. I think
Because
blinds.
the way I understood it is like you have the shell of the property, whatever you have surrounding it, inside it, so that will be classified as plant and machinery.
Yeah, so you can certainly, I believe you can certainly include curtains and blinds and things like that, but I'm not sure that you can include loose furnishings, but I may be wrong on that. But definitely you can include. But I mean, if you just think about it scale wise, if you're buying a property for 210,000, 1/3 of the value is likely to be plant and machinery. So that's like £70,000. And that gives you tax relief on £70,000 worth of earnings. Well, if you're a standard taxpayer, that's worth having. If you're a high rate taxpayer, it's massively worth having.
Definitely.
Now, but there are, I mean, you need a specialist to be able to calculate what it should be. And
a
also
surveyor, right? You need a surveyor.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You need a capital allowance
Capital allowance surveyor, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And they tend to come from a sort of an accounting sort of background. But they will schedule what's in the property and value it, and then they'll make a claim to HMRC. And of course, there's a cost for them to do it, but it's well worth it.
Yeah, it's a great benefit, tax-free. Yeah.
But it's probably worth saying, because a lot of people that start SA will do it with rent to SA.
Okay.
And it's not applicable to a rent to SA. It's only applicable when you purchase. And so somebody that purchases, now I'm not a specialist in this area, so do check these things out. But if somebody purchases a property and uses it as SA, then it would be eligible for capital allowance. If they purchase it and then they rent it to somebody else so that they can use it as SA, well, the SA operator can't apply for capital allowances. But the person that bought the property can't, because he's not actually operating it as SA. It's not a commercial use. He's actually fundamentally he's renting it or
renting it. Yes. Yeah.
So the way over that is you get the two people to do a joint venture, so that the person who owns the property has a stake in the income from the SA operation. And in that situation, as I understand it, he can apply for capital allowances. So that's a hugely important point.
Yeah, very important point. I didn't know that.
Because a lot of people that own a property and they rent it out to somebody to use for SA, they think, well, that's a liability off my hand. That's good. But actually, they've just given away their capital allowances, potentially.
Yeah. Interesting. So I'm guessing you can talk to an accountant with regards to that, to set it up correctly, and a solicitor.
So you need two things. You do need an accountant. You need your accountant to understand what's going on. Now, of course, most accountants will say they know about capital allowances, but they probably don't in terms of how it applies to serviced accommodation. So you really need either an accountant with specialist knowledge in that area, or you need to engage one of these specialist surveyors that will work alongside your accountant.
And I'm guessing you know one.
We know several, yes.
So you can, after you like and subscribe, maybe you can ask, and we can ask David, I'm sure. Okay, David, with regards to commercial energy tariffs, I understand one time I was trying to take on a property which didn't work out, but I understood that it was graded as F in the energy certificate, energy performance certificate. And the reason, it could have been easily D or C, but the reason for that is because they used the energy, commercial energy tariff. So once you remove that, that could be upgraded. Maybe you can explain a little bit more for that, and what you can expand a little bit more with regards to savings. Obviously, energy is a very big thing these days. Electricity, yeah. So
Yeah, it's big subject, and so I think there actually I'm tackling it in a slightly different way. The from our point of view, the energy costs are significant, and obviously the world is changing at the minute, and they're becoming more significant. Trying to fathom out which energy tariff is the best one to get hold of is a nightmare. You can spend a life looking at different tariffs and companies. So we actually employ a company to do that on our behalf, and they get the best energy tariffs that they can achieve. And they deal with placing of the contracts. It saves us a huge amount of work. So I would recommend anyone doing that rather than actually trying to work out themselves which best tariff to go for. Because if you get somebody dealing with that, you can actually focus on your SA business rather than actually, just sort of consuming tons of time.
It's something basically to take in consideration, I think, because it could save a lot of money. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing that for us we're now just starting to do is to introduce control equipment, so you can operate heating, for instance, remotely. That has multiple benefits. It means you can put the heating on before a visitor arrives, so the place is warm and appealing when they first walk in. But it also means, and this does happen, if a visitor leaves and they leave the heating on, you can actually turn it off.
Remotely.
Our VA in the Philippines can turn it off.
Great, yeah. Okay, just well, limited on time. So with regards to cleaning, as it's such as an important role, what can you explain about that with Plan B that you were saying?
Yeah, I personally think that Plan B, pretty well anything you do in business, Plan B is always important. So we're always very open with our housekeepers, for instance, that they will not have exclusive contract to all of our properties, and that as we grow, we will bring in other housekeepers. So we use a company. It's a small company. It's an individual person that is operating a company, and it's working really great. And she's great. So don't get me the wrong way. But as a business, I know at some point in time, she will decide on something different, or her life circumstances will force something different, and we'll be left holding as what do we do now? So actually having a second company alongside, is for us really important, because if one is out of the question, out of the equation, even if only on a temporary basis, you've got somebody else that you can call on and bring in. So I'd sort of highlight that as a there's no forgiving in this industry. If you've got somebody checking out at 10 o'clock in the morning and you've got somebody checking in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they're not going to ring you up and say, "Oh, don't worry about today, we'll come tomorrow. I realize you got a problem." It just won't happen. You've got to be ready. So be
on the ball.
Absolutely. So it's why the systems are so important. It's why the software is important. And the other thing, that going back to the software, I would just say that it's all about communication. So if software is updated with what has and hasn't happened, somebody in the Philippines can see it. I can see what's happening with our properties in Scotland. It's absolutely vital that the communication tools are there, and that you've got cover. So if you're booking, the person that deals with your bookings is out of the equation, who's going to step in? It goes through all business aspects, really.
Okay, David, let's talk about guest access. How do they enter your properties? What procedures do you have?
So we do this a number of different ways. We've got some properties where we've got electronic locks. I have to say that's my preferred option. It obviously comes at a cost. These things are like £200 or £300 a pop, but it means that you can change the code on a regular basis fairly easily. It also means you can do that remotely, and obviously for us that's quite important. The other thing is a really easy access for the visitor. They just arrive at the door, put the number in, and walk in. So that's my preferred option. But we do have a number of properties where for one reason or another we can't put that sort of lock on the door, and in those cases we tend to have the classic key safe, It's a bit lower tech, but it works perfectly okay, and we've got that on a number of properties. The only comment I'd make on that: always think about having 2 key safes, because you will always find that a visitor at some point in time will lose the key or walk away with the key. Leave it on the dashboard or whatever they do, and you need a backup plan for getting into the property. And it's much easier if you've got that backup plan at the property rather than having a backup plan that relies on somebody coming from around the corner and blow me, they've just gone on holiday.
And another thing, while you were talking, you have your access. What happens if a guest misses it? Because a lot of people are coming from the airport at times. What if they lose the battery in their phone? So, how do they contact, or some devices are workable via the phone, opening via the phone?
Oh, I see. Yeah. So we've not used those devices. Interesting. So in other words, a phone activated lock. Yes, there are.
I was reading about that.
Yeah. So I'll be perfectly honest, I haven't addressed that issue because I haven't got those sorts of devices. So I suppose that is a risk, isn't it? I don't know. You see a lot of people that come to our properties do fly. They've invariably got a phone when they get here. I can imagine somebody might fly and their battery go flat while they're flying or something. But
I was reading about it somewhere that is something you have to take, but that's a little bit irresponsible of the guest, to be honest, if they don't have it.
I mean, in an absolute emergency, and if somebody got to one of our properties and they couldn't get in because they didn't have a phone battery, assuming they could somehow get in touch with us with somebody else's mobile or whatever, I would go around and let them in, or I'd get somebody in my team to go around and let them in. It is always important that, even when we're managing properties remotely, that we have somebody on call, local, that can go and sort out an emergency. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. What about cameras? Do you have any cameras? CCTV outside? Obviously not inside. Cannot be.
Not inside, no. We don't have any. And we don't. We don't, and there's a lot of discussion about this on Facebook. The thing, actually, the thing we haven't covered, I think is really important, is that whenever you set up a new SA, the real question you should be asking yourself right at the beginning is, what market am I aiming at? Because
look at the big pictures, go zoom out, in 4 minutes, and then that's true. That's a good point.
And our stance has been to keep our prices not high, but higher in the top 3/4 percentile bracket, and that's not because we want more per night from our property. Of course, we do as a business.
Definitely.
But one of the key things is that the type of people that you get are different. If you go for a low budget customer, the chances are you will get more of the difficult encounters in where you need cameras and you need noise detectors.
So noise detectors, I was about to ask you,
So we don't have those either. No, I'm not saying we're immune from these things, and once in a blue moon we will get them. But we've not had many difficult instances, and usually if they happen, the neighbor tips us off and we get somebody around there pretty quick.
Okay, just on another subject is with regards to pictures. I see the pictures behind you to your right. How important it is to have professional pictures. Can you take your own pictures? Explain about that.
It's it's interesting because I've just taken on 3 properties in the last few weeks for other people, and this is always a topic of conversation, because invariably they will say,
to me it's very clear to me. Yes.
Invariably they will say, oh, we'll get you photos, and what they mean is they've got their iPhone, they're going to take a photo. And of course you can do that, and it's important to do that to get the listing up as quickly as possible in order to get income coming in as quickly as possible. But frankly, you really, really, really should get professional photos, because the difference it makes is huge. And if you look at if you do a search, if you pretend that you're going to go and stay somewhere, and you do a search on Airbnb or booking.com, whatever it is, and you get that list of properties and you look at the photos, and you can tell which ones are taken by somebody themselves and which ones are taken by professionals. The key thing is usually the light and the brightness of the photo, but it's also in the composition. And what I would say is, if you think about how you react to those photos, and if you're choosing which ones you would be drawn to, it doesn't take long before you can see the professional photos definitely have a real effect. So yeah, I would always
unless
say
you are a amateur photographer like me, and then you have like a really good camera, and I took like so many pictures, and then you are like handpicking the good ones. And besides, also it gives an idea, plants an idea in the mind of the guests. I can do this, I can do that. You sit up the table, we can have a party like this. So it encourages them to book, so it gets them excited.
But I'll pick up on your comment there about the amateur photographer. You don't have to spend a lot on photography. There are plenty of Facebook photography groups that you can join and just ask, is there anyone around that can take some photos? And you'll get somebody that's doing it as a serious hobby, and they will take, in a way, a lot more care, and they'll take more time to arrange and present. Whereas a professional photographer will want to go in, go snap, 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 and disappear, and he'll take your 20 shots or 30 shots or whatever you paid for. But your amateurs sometimes will do a better job. So the person that we use is really an amateur. I mean, she's got a job, but she does this as an amateur thing, and she'll take 50 shots. And okay, not every other 50 shots is great, but most of them are pretty good, and they're certainly much better quality than I would ever do.
Really good point. All right. What should you focus on when you prepare the unit with regards to parking, like an information book? Big thing in the UK is make sure you have hot water. How do you explain it? So people are not going to experience.
So do you mean which features are the most important to cover?
Just preparing the unit, basically. How do you prepare the unit? Set it up.
So in terms of priority, I would say it's parking.
Yes.
It's in my, I mean, don't get me wrong, particularly in town centres, city centres, there are lots of units that don't have parking, and there clearly is a market for it, because that people will travel to those places by train and all the rest of it. But it is so much easier to book a property if it's got parking, and you widen your audience if it's got parking. So for us, if we're choosing a new property, we will always make sure it's got parking. We will not take one ourselves without parking.
What else do you? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, we wouldn't refuse to manage one for somebody else, but I think parking is a big attraction item.
What else you should focus on in preparing when you're preparing or setting up the property?
I think dressing is really important, because, well, partly because it feeds into the photos, so I think there's a, well, actually, I suppose I use those photos behind me, because that property, the one at the top, actually lets really, really well. It's not an elaborate color scheme. It's a simple branded one. It's picking up on our blue. There is a view that you need to do interior design, very complex interior design, very, sort of, and there's nothing wrong with those. They're great, and they attract certain types of people. But you don't necessarily have to do that. But what you do have to do is to do something that looks clean, crisp, presentable, attractive, and has got an appeal. If you do that, you'll get bookings.
I think in a way, what you can do is just have a look at, that's what I did. I had a look at Airbnb. I saw what looks and appeals to me. When I look at the pictures, I see big rooms. I see neutral colors. Put some nice bed sheets on the bed, so it will appeal. Yeah, and the small perks also. Yeah. So yeah, just take whatever works and what appeals to you, and then just copy it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We also do little things like, you know, we put you know, sort of a biscuit, or these days a chocolate on the towel. You know, it's just that little treat when you walk in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Doesn't cost a lot, takes a little bit of effort by the housekeeper, but the number of times that our reviews say, "Oh, chocolate was a nice touch."
Yeah. I put a lot of water and chocolate, some candies. People loved it. Yeah. Do you have any welcome packs beside the chocolates? Any other things that you provide for you with your property?
No, we have a philosophy. I mean, the kitchen. Well, it's interesting. In the kitchen, we have the usual, you know, teas and coffees, and we have a rule that they should always be full. You know, the coffee pot.
Yeah. It's England.
You don't want it to look empty and half mean and lean.
Yes.
So that takes a bit of communication with the housekeeping team as well, because
is it? Oh, okay.
You know, when people first, when the new housekeeper comes and not perhaps so used to SA or working with us, they'll lift the lid and say, "Oh, there's coffee in there," and they'll shut the lid. Whereas actually what we're saying, no, it's got to be at least 3/4 full.
Of course, yeah. Do you have like spot checks on the houses, and how periodically do you do them?
Absolutely. So I would say once every couple of months. You don't need lots of house check. So the lady that runs a housekeeping company, she is responsible for doing her own house checks. But I will actually, I or one of the team, it's usually me because of it being local here in Southampton, will do it. The ones where we manage for other people, I will engage somebody independently. And you know, it can be a student or somebody. You know, if you get a mature, sensible student, you can send them around and say, just take photos and show me what you found, make comments about what you found. It doesn't have to be a housekeeper doing it, but those spot checks are important.
But I think it has to be like a third party also, because if your housekeeper is doing the check, so okay. What about another subject with regards to direct bookings?
Yeah.
How do you promote them? What do you do in order to get it to expand your profit, basically?
Multiple things.
Very
really
important.
It's there's no one strategy. So obviously you've got to be driving traffic to your website. You need to be doing email campaigns. You need to be staying in contact with all your previous visitors. You need to be talking to visitors that are in your property now, thing that we were saying about that before. You need to be doing all of those things. And if you are interested in corporate or contractor bookings, then you need to be doing some sort of direct marketing to companies.
Hold them up, yeah. You know, and another thing I've done, and I saw it somewhere in a podcast, I believe, I used the use of Google Business, so that got me a lot of direct bookings. But the only thing, you can relate it only to one property, or and it's kind of limited on pictures. So you go into Google Business, and then you set it up, you put all the pictures, you put all the information, and it's unbelievable the amount of people. I forwarded also to you, the people who are coming through that. So if you are starting service accommodation, holiday let, it is a great way to get direct bookings.
Okay, that's good tip.
Yeah. With regards to guest vetting, what ways do you have to tackle the bad people?
Well, obviously we've got the checks that we were talking about before, you know, so you got the deposit, you got your terms and conditions, you've got the check-in form. For us,
and you also call the guest, right, directly, because I call them sometimes. Pretty well every time, not absolutely every time. So the deposit, and part of that is the deposit is taken by phone call. And so that phone call is a phone call where, in a way, I suss out whether the person on the other end of the phone sounds sensible and reasonable. It can't be 100%, but it's it gives you a fair indication quite often. And I try and use it. Not everybody will want to have a conversation, but I try and use it to generate a conversation, build some sort of rapport with the person. So you do that whenever there is a suspicion, like for example with Airbnb, you can see if somebody rented before, if somebody left any reviews on them. Booking, I think it's not.
No, okay, so it is different on different channels. Airbnb, we probably do it less because we probably rely more on the profile they have with Airbnb. So we don't always speak to Airbnb customers before they come in, although quite often we do. Booking.com and the other platforms, we actually have to ring them in order to take the deposit.
Oh, so that's how it works. Okay.
Okay, and we use that as the vehicle, the platform, to have a conversation and start
with
building
them.
a rapport.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Excellent. Okay.
Okay. The other thing that we do is and this again, mindset wise, took a lot of persuasion. Is we do 3-night minimum booking.
Yes.
And the reason for that is that the people who want a cheap pad for a party are unlikely to book a property for 3 nights, particularly if your price levels are slightly higher.
So also you have to look at the expenses. 1 night, it means you have to get a cleaner. What if you have another cleaner later on? You have to change another bed sheet if it's for 3 days. So you have to change it maybe only once. Towels. It just makes sense also. Well, the most important thing is to vet the guests because of that, because they want to have the apartment for 1 day and then they disappear and leave you all the trouble.
I think the other thing for us that's significant, if you have 1 night bookings, it's very heavy duty on your housekeepers. They've got to be ready to jump and go there tomorrow if you've had 1 night booking. And with the best will in the world, that's quite difficult for a housekeeper.
Unless it works for you, because I mean, if you're like super close by and you can bump up a little bit the occupancy because of that, and it's something that works in your strategy because you have like minimal amount of service accommodation, so maybe that works, because I was looking at a place, the occupancy was like super high, but it was like city center. The people she was targeting, the landlady, was mainly for party people. So so that was our strategy. Maybe it worked for her. So it depends what is your strategy and how can you accommodate yourself and put yourself in the equation, and then you raise value. So maybe it works for you.
I think that's absolutely true, and that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about really working out what your market is. The comment that I would make though is, if you are doing 1 night bookings, and particularly if you are doing 1 night bookings under the situation you've just described, it is extremely high demand, high maintenance. On you and your systems and your housekeeping team, and also your handyman and your tradesmen. If something's going wrong, and they will, they've got to be on call. So there's nothing wrong with
Plan B all the time. That's
Plan B all the time,
especially in something like that. But
it's not a starter strategy. you've got to have quite a well-oiled system to make that work.
That's
really
true.
well. So you just need to bear that in mind.
I meant if for example, correct me if I'm wrong, if you are living like super close by and you can have like the access box, you have like 4 hours to clean the apartment and it fits your schedule, and just in case you have like a plan B, and that's like a super excellent profit for you. So maybe it does work as a beginner as well. Obviously there will be the hurdles, but it might. It all depends what is the situation, I believe, of the person.
The one thing we do that's worked quite well for us, and I think this is an interesting one, although I say we're 3-day minimum, if we get 2 bookings and there's a gap between the 2 bookings of 3 days or less, we set our pricing software to accept a 2-day booking at an inflated price. And that works quite nicely, partly because it fills the gap, partly because it gets us a good nightly rate, and partly because we've still got 3 days flexibility to organise the housekeeper.
It's a great idea. Okay. What is your occupancy rate with your your properties? What percentage do you reach?
So typically it's around about 80%.
Yes. Oh, that's good. Yes.
So sometimes it obviously it's less in the winter. I mean, this month and pretty much most of last month, we're close on 100%.
Yeah, definitely. July.
And of course, some would say, well, actually, if you're 100% occupancy, your prices are too low, you need to jack them up. But actually, I know that our prices are high compared with others, but demand is high.
Yes.
And of course, what happens is that when you are pricing slightly higher, which we do, you don't always get bookings well in advance. So you approach a period of thinking, where are the bookings? But then they come in. So we've
I think it's a combination of also the pandemic. So people are not aware what are they going to do and where are they going to go. They're thinking, no, should we do it? Should we not do it? How the situation in the
I think when I last looked, our occupancy on the properties that have been running for a while, I should say that, are in the sort of 75 to 80% sort of bracket. Obviously, newer properties, and it's worth people being aware of this. If you take on new property, it's a bit of a journey to get it to go. Because what you really need, you need some bookings quickly to get some reviews. They're really important.
Super important. Especially.
I mean, we advocate reducing the price for a while in order to get bookings, for us to stay in close touch with people, to encourage them to give reviews, and then that starts to improve your occupancy, partly because the rates are lower, partly because you're getting the reviews, and then it sort of escalates over time, and then you can push the prices up a little bit and get a better spread. But so you will probably start off with sort of 50-60% occupancy in the early months, but you're trying to get that up to 70-80 within a probably a sort of 4 or 5 month period.
Some people I can read between the lines are like some operators. They get like a friend come in for one night, so then they can like for 20 quid get like a special review. You could see it, in some places. That's another way, which is
and people do that.
I saw it too. So. Or just as a summary, what kind of systems do you use? You said properly. Can you just mention as a brief review of?
Yes. So for us, the core is the channel manager, property manager system, and we use something called Guesty.
Guesty.
It's one of the more expensive ones, I'll be perfectly frank. It's our third channel manager. We started off with Takit. We found that very clunky, very geeky. I'm sure it has developed now, but there always seemed to be controversy on the Facebook group that discussed it. We outgrew it, I think. We then moved to something that seemed to be all bells and whistles and seemed to be amazing. That was called Zeevoo.
Zeevoo, I spoke to them,
Yeah, we found it terrible.
Did you? Okay.
So,
I haven't used it, but they were giving me a presentation for an hour, so it was quite impressive, but I haven't used it eventually, yes.
So, this is my opinion. I
never used it, so yeah.
There are loads of people who use Zeevoo and think it's great, but my opinion is that it's brilliant and it's sophisticated and it's got all the bells and whistles, but it's been developed by IT geeks for IT geeks. And actually, what we found is it was really difficult to use. And if you needed to do something, it wasn't obvious where you would go in the software to do it. So you really had to know the software inside out to be able to do the more difficult things. And for an operator like us, who we're in the process of scaling and doing more outsourcing, that meant a much bigger learning curve for me, but it meant a much bigger learning curve at that time for our bookings manager and for other people in the VA team. And that learning has a huge cost. So at the end of the day, we moved to Guesty, which is definitely more expensive, but it's got all the bells and whistles. It's much more sophisticated. It's got a lot more
Yes.
functionality. Its guest communication side is absolutely fantastic.
Would you recommend the Guesty for a beginner or intermediate, or just more advanced?
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, I think I'd put the question a different way. I wouldn't suggest it for a beginner, because actually it is quite a bit. It's quite an expensive bit of software. I think actually they have a 5 property minimum. I think you have to have a number of properties as a minimum number to be able to sign up with them. So it's probably not a beginner's product. There are other things that you can use to get started and then move across to it if you grow and become a bit more sophisticated. But I think the big question for anyone that's starting out in SA is to really think through what you want to achieve from it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, irrespective of what software you choose, it's a lot of work and a lot of moving parts. So you've got to decide really whether you want the workload and the learning of doing that, or whether actually, if you're really treating this as a sort of, what shall I say, an investing money machine, you're better off getting somebody else to do it for you and actually focus on getting more and more properties and grow that way. But you know, each person has to make their own judgment. You know, how many properties do you want? Do you want the workload of managing it? Are you happy to be on 24-hour call? You know, how does this affect your holidays and who's going to cover for those? All those things need thinking
If you don't
through.
have plan B, definitely, yeah.
Absolutely.
When I came across it, I understood, you know, and I think it's coming to every strategy. Once you go into details, you get the pros and cons, and then you might change your strategy, and you say, "Oh, it doesn't fit my my way of life." And but yeah, it's not like you just collect the money. You know, things are happening, and it's you running a business, and it's like you're going from one job to another. But yeah, it all depends how do you develop the business and what you learn from it. And you know, you change, for example, your channel manager 3 times. So yeah, in order to improve, and it's working because you're scaling. Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, that is the decision we've made. We actually want to scale. You know, I intend getting up 30-40 properties and you know, or maybe even more. But it's about, as you scale, you build the team to suit, and obviously you start you know, doing more areas as well. So
yeah, okay. All right. Well, amazing. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot from it. Hopefully, we'll get you one more time for the architect, maybe. Or maybe if people have any comments, they can mention it below after they like, subscribe, of any other aspects that we didn't cover with the service accommodation, we can discuss about for next time. And we'd love having you again.
It's a big subject, so there could be.
It is, yes, definitely.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. If anyone wants to reach out and contact direct, they're welcome to use the the website at the top there, or the telephone number. And yeah, if I can help, I will.
Yes, as you mentioned, also you're taking mentorship if somebody needs to, some assistant. I'm sure you'll answer any questions some people have if they have.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure having you in our channel. All right, David, thank you so much.
I've enjoyed the chat.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.